Welcome to a Monday edition of the First Things First podcast. I'm your host, Jenna Wolfe. Big NFL show today. Greg Jennings is with us. We're talking about the Cowboys. Is Dallas the team to beat in the NFC? Plus, is it time to worry about Cam Newton? And can the Giants compete without a healthy Odell Beckham Jr.? Let's get it started. All right, we are going to kick things off in Dallas, where the Giants had to try their best without Odell Beckham Jr. in the lineup. He was sidelined by that high ankle sprain he suffered in the preseason. The Cowboys then went on to beat the Giants 19-3, dominating the game from the start to the finish. Dak Prescott threw for 268 yards and a touchdown. Ezekiel Elliott had 24 carries for 104 yards. After the game, Elliott spoke about returning to the field after a tumultuous offseason.
It just feels good to be out here with these boys. You know, it's definitely been a tough last 14 months, and, you know, at times it's gotten so hard, and, you know, you start to lose faith. But, you know, just being able to come in and be with these boys every day has kept me focused and, you know, made me, you know, not give up and keep going.
All right, we're going to break down Zeke and all of it, but, Nick, I will start with a very general question. Do the Cowboys look like the clear favorites after last night's game to come out of the NFC?
Well, I don't know if it's clear favorites, but they are so much better positioned this morning than they were Friday morning. Because two things have happened. Not only did they beat the New York Giants, the team that I thought, past tense, I'm not sure yet, was going to win that division, and they have the tiebreaker edge now, all of that. But they also found out Friday that Ezekiel Elliott, the guy that we all discussed as, if not the most important Cowboy, certainly the second most important Cowboy, he got some injunctive relief to where now he's likely going to be available the entirety of the season. So much of our analysis going into week one was under the assumption Zeke was going to miss nearly 40% of the season. Now, he might have to serve that suspension at some point next year, but if Ezekiel Elliott's there all year, Dak Prescott looks like Dak Prescott looked last year, which is really damn efficient, makes no mistakes, and makes a few big plays every game. And all of a sudden, something you brought up earlier, CC, in the meeting, which is the defense has a little more life than we had seen in the past. I don't know if Dallas is the clear favorite, but they certainly looked a lot more like that defending number one, 13-3 seed that they were last year.
Well, clear. Well, there's a couple of things that were clear to me. I don't know if they're clearly the favorite. Number one thing, Rod Marinelli, the defense coordinator at Dallas, if Zeke plays, they're going to dominate time and possession. Last night had the ball over 10 minutes more than the Giants. So that defense that he's done a remarkable job on, a bunch of guys, you don't know their names. If Zeke is able to do that, then the defense is going to be a lot better with Rod Marinelli. Their defensive backs, we don't know how good they're going to be because they didn't have Odell. Now, Brandon Marshall, I don't know what happened to him, witness protection. Giants fans, if you happen to see Brandon Marshall, please take him to the next game because you're definitely going to need him. And the overall bright spot for me in the whole thing was middle linebacker Jalen Smith. Went through horrific injury in the bowl game. 2 seasons ago, Alabama was going to be a top 5 pick, fell in the draft, missed all of last season, but you can see he's their best linebacker. 3-down linebacker, explosive, can play in the box, can play sideline to sideline, can play in man-to-man. Remarkable story. Towards ACL, towards MCL, had nerve damage, actually was wearing some apparatus on his foot because there's no one else in the league playing with drop foot. He spent almost a year with drop foot. So it's amazing. So Dallas, great showing. You beat the Giants. That's better than you did last year. But they didn't have Odell. So, you know, I'm buyer beware.
On Jalen Smith, just quickly, if people don't remember, Notre Dame player was going to be a top 5 pick, and people thought it was a career ender.
Yes.
Cowboys took a calculated risk drafting him in the 2nd round, believing if he can get back on the field, which was a real if, not if he can get back on the field and be 100%, if he can get back on the field at all and regain that form, then you're getting a top 5 pick in the 2nd round. You mentioned it. I mean, last night he looked the part when people thought it might be 2 years before he's back on the field.
We came in here assuming before we left on Friday, we'd be talking about the Dallas offense. I'm going to do that again. That was fun. We're going to But now we're talking about the Dallas defense, which is great. Jalen had a great game. It's great to see that part of the ball stepped up. But how much of that was how just inept the Giants' offense looked?
It's part of both, because the one reason why they're effective because they're a little undersized. So if they're undersized, they have to play with a lead, and they can't play 30 to 35 minutes, all right? With the time of possession, it's so critical with an undersized defense, and it's critical with the lead. So you don't have to play a lot of man-to-man, and the Giants didn't have a game breaker out there. All they had to do was play coverage, play everything in front of them, run to the ball, make the tackle. So it's a big difference, that time element. The physicality of that offensive line and Zeke, it just takes something out. The wear and the tear, and their defense is fresh. So the ability to be able to convert third downs, Dallas did. The Giants' inability to be able to get off the field. And to me, Odell Beckham made himself some money yesterday by sitting out compared to limping around in the game.
Yeah. I'm glad you brought that up. This is one of these things that you're going to get mad at me for saying, because it is such an anti-team, anti-competitive, anti-player thing. But, man, if I'm Odell, I don't know that I'm healthy or not. I don't know that I'm going back to play until I have my new contract. Like, hey, guess what, Giants? I've proven now. There is no argument about who the most important player on this team is. You guys, the team has spent an enormous amount of money on its defense. Eli is in the twilight of his career. They do not have a ton of prime years left to potentially win a championship. And if I'm Odell, I say, what more do you need to see, guys? Like, look at your offense, what it was last year, what it was the last few years. Look at it now, right against the Cowboys defense that, even though Jalen Smith was out there, nobody thinks that's going to be a top 10 defense. And the Cowboys had a dominating effort. The Giants did not make it past their own 35-yard line in the entire first half. They didn't have 50 yards of offense in the first half. They were as impotent as any offense you will ever see. And that's not who they are when Odell's out there.
And I have to tell the truth. I talked to Odell yesterday morning, and I'm not going to say I had to talk him out of playing, but I tried to talk some sense into him. Because when he woke up yesterday morning, he had worked out the day before, and that's the way you do it with a high ankle sprain, because you want to see the next day how much soreness. So he was pretty sore yesterday, but he wanted to play. And he was going to go to the stadium. He's going to keep getting treatment throughout the day. He was going to go to the stadium and work out and try to play. Now, the medical staff and the Giants, they did the best thing for him because he was not fit to be in that game. But, man, did he want to play, Nick.
And
he wanted to play. He was like, regardless, I might hurt myself. Because a lot of times when you play with a high ankle sprain, you're a skilled guy. It hampers you all season. Then you end up getting a bone spur in the front of your ankle, and then about 18 months, 2 years, you need surgery to get it removed. So, man, I mean, he really wanted to be out there. So it hurt him to be sitting on that sideline.
Nick, you had the New York Giants going to the Super Bowl.
I did.
How could you pick a team to go to the Super Bowl with everything you know when there's such a marked difference between playing with a player and playing without a player?
Because
this team could play the way it played without one guy in the lineup. I know it's their best guy, but without one guy in the lineup is astounding to me that you think they had enough tools all around to be able to go to the Super Bowl.
In defense of the Giants, that defense is still that defense. The Cowboys, since Dak Prescott took over, they've scored at least 20 points in every game he's played in except 5. 3 of those 5 are the 3 games they've played against the Giants. The Cowboys under Dak have never broken 20 points against this Giants defense. The defense is still great. If you'd have told me going into the game, you're going to hold Dallas to 19 points, who do you got? I got the Giants if Odell's playing. I've been trying to tell America for a year and a half now.
Tell them one more time,
that
Nick.
Odell Beckham is the best player in the league. Throw the quarterbacks out of it. Quarterbacks are a different discussion entirely because they're so much more impactful on every single play. But aside from quarterbacks, Odell is the best player in the league, the most important player in the league, and you saw it. You saw that the Giants had no downfield passing. You saw that the Giants had no game breakers. You saw that their running game couldn't get going. So had I made that pick knowing Odell might miss week 1. If I thought Odell was going to miss 6 weeks, I never would have made that pick. Once he gets on the field, assuming the offensive line isn't totally inept, their offense is going to be good enough to go along with that great defense.
And people always think he's a distraction. He actually gives the Giants juice. So for me, a lot of time when you have a dominant personality, a dominant player, and then right before the game, they announce him out, sometimes in the locker room, there's an effect of, oh, wow, we got to play without. Now, I don't know if that happened to the Giants, but that's what they looked like. They looked like they had lost their most important player before the game, and the air was out of the balloon before they even went on the field.
So the Packers got the best of the Seahawks, winning their season opener 17-9. A strip sack by Mike Daniels set up Green Bay's first touchdown of the day, a 6-yard run by Ty Montgomery. Aaron Rodgers looked great, throwing over for 300 yards and a touchdown, but that doesn't mean he was hogging all the credit. Take a listen.
Did a good job on third down against them, but the key of the game is our defense. Our defense plays like that, and we're going to be tough to beat. They were fantastic. Big turnover that got us 7 points, a 6-yard field, one-play touchdown drive when our offense was stalling. That kind of got everybody going. But, yeah, they were the stars of the game for sure.
Very nice to share some of the credit there. CC, were you more impressed by the Packers, or are you more concerned with the Seahawks after watching this game?
I would say more impressed with the Packers, because if the Packers, I'm not going to put too much pressure on Dom Capers, the defensive coordinator. He's gotten a lot of criticism over the last several years. But if the Packers, if they happen to have a top 10 defense, they're going to the Super Bowl. I mean, yesterday, their ability to be able to stop Seattle from what they want to do. Eddie Lacy, I know he might have made the weigh-ins, right, Nick? He made a lot of money this offseason. Yeah. But
he was terrible.
He's running now like he's got bricks in his pockets. Now, Eddie Lacy was ineffective, a lot because the penetration of the defensive line. Their front seven made more plays behind the line of scrimmage and also harassed Russell Wilson. So that was the most impressive part, because if they're able to continue to do that, we know Aaron Rodgers, eventually, methodically, he's going to make 2 or 3 plays. He's the best at getting the team to jump offside and getting a free play, throwing it down the field. But I have to say, all last week, the #1 analyst for Green Bay, right here, Jenna Wolfe.
Oh, yeah.
Because what did she say?
When they're off schedule,
when their offense is off schedule.
I said off script.
Off script, which means off schedule.
Yep.
That means if there's a free runner in the backfield, there's a blitzer, all the things the coaches can't design, Aaron Rodgers is the best in the business. And that's what you're able to see yesterday. First down, getting them out of bad plays, converting third downs. He's the best in the business. But with a defense that's in the top 10, the Green Bay Packers are definitely Super Bowl contenders.
Here's why I am much more concerned with Seattle. Because I do not think Green Bay has anything close to a top 10 defense. But they sure looked like it yesterday. So why did they look like it yesterday? Seattle's offensive line, which was the reason last year that Seattle wasn't a real Super Bowl contender, has somehow gotten worse. Russell Wilson was under pressure on 40% of his dropbacks. To give you some comparison, Aaron Rodgers was under pressure less than 20% of his. Russell Wilson under pressure, 2 out of every 5 times he drops back, he's got someone in his face. The left tackle, Reese Odihambo, I apologize if I mispronounce it, gave him a sack, 2 hits, 3 hurries, was terrible. They could get nothing going on the ground. They could get nothing going offensively at all because they were constantly under attack. And if Seattle was playing its own D-line, then I would say, okay, maybe it was just the defense was too good. I do not believe Green Bay's defense is going to be very good this year. And so if Green Bay's defense isn't going to be that good, how is Seattle going to do when they play the Arizona Cardinals defense? While the Cardinals have trouble on offense, it looks like that defense still has a bunch of monsters on it. How is Seattle going to do throughout the year when they play the Rams defense in a few weeks? Aaron Donald will be back. Like, how are they going to block anybody? That's my concern, because I'm not concerned with Seattle's defense. I thought Seattle's defense played brilliantly and got screwed, actually, and which we can talk about later, by a terrible call early. But Seattle's offensive line was so bad, I think it could kneecap their whole season.
I met a butcher here in New York. Good butcher.
Of course you did.
And he taught me something. But he taught me something about meat. I didn't think I'd be able to transfer it over to football. He knows who a couple guys told him who I was and everything. He's a big football fan. And he's like, Mr. Carter, what would you like? And I was like, I would like that filet. He was like, I need to tell you something. Good meat, not cheap. I was like, okay. And then I went down a little bit and everything, went down to the sirloin. I pointed at that. He said, Mr. Carter, cheap meat, not good. That's where John Snyder and Pete Carroll and them are as far as the offensive line.
It's a long bridge to build, but you got us there, brother.
Last in compensation. If you're looking at which group makes the least amount of money, the Seattle Seahawks offensive line. Least paid last year. Now, their left tackle is already out for the season. So you got concerns at offensive line. They have a great offensive line coach in Tom Cable, but he can't perform miracles. With that, they haven't spent any money because of the Russell Wilson contract and the bad trade to Jimmy Graham.
Yeah, well, that's the thing is they had a good offensive lineman, Max Unger.
Yes.
Instead, they traded him away for an expensive tight end. An expensive tight end they're not even using.
They needed Jimmy Graham to be a number one receiver, and he's not.
No. And, all right, go ahead, Jenna. I'm sorry.
I was just going to say, so what do you do? Russell Wilson doesn't get it done in the air. Russell Wilson doesn't get it done on the ground. How do you fix this?
This is how it breaks down. They got 8 home games. They have the biggest home field advantage in all of sports.
Plus, you toss in the 49ers next week.
At the least, they're going to win 7 games at home. All right? So, on the road, all they have to do is go 5-3. That's 12-4.
Well, with
a bad offensive line. That's like the worst they could do. 11-5, if it's a disaster, but they're going to be 12-4, 13-3 at the end of the season because they got 8 home games. Who's going to beat them there?
Well, listen, I think they're going to win their division.
Look at your schedule.
I'm looking at it, but and I agree with you about the home games, but they have to go on the road to the Giants. They have to go on the road to Dallas. There's 2 games that I don't know that they can block those guys. And I don't know they can outscore Dallas, but they're going to win their division. Arizona looks like they have a broken quarterback. The Rams aren't going to get to play the Colts every week. And the Niners, as you mentioned, are the Niners. So they'll be able to win their division. But Seattle, you don't trade for Sheldon Richardson, spend all this money on your team so you can just win your division again and then get knocked out. They're trying to win a Super Bowl. And if I am Seattle, I've said for my entire career, blaming the refs is for losers. But, man, if I were a Seahawks fan, I'd be angry at those refs. In a low-scoring game, the refs stole 2 touchdowns from Seattle. The first one was as bad of a dual calls as I've ever seen. Aaron Rodgers throws his first interception in 250 attempts. What you're going to see after this interception right there is a block in the back. Rodgers didn't even stumble. It hit him in the shoulder. That is not a block in the back, and it didn't affect the play. And right there, what you're going to see is allegedly a punch. People were tweeting me, why didn't Fox show the Jeremy Lane punch? Because it didn't flip and happen. It was the big game on Fox, Joe Buck, Troy Aikman, every camera angle in the world. They throw Jeremy Lane out of the game, which had a butterfly effect on the rest of the secondary. They take a touchdown off the board early. And then late in the game, Jimmy Graham gets molested in the back of the end zone. It was as blatant of a pass interference as you'll see. It should have been 1st and goal from the 1, and they don't throw a flag. If Green Bay played well, Seattle, despite the offensive line trouble, could have and maybe should have won that game if either of those calls go the right way. And this is a game you could look to. If you're right, the Seahawks could be 12-4.
Yes.
This could be the tiebreaker between who gets home field advantage, the head-to-head tiebreaker. It's a brutal turn of events for them.
There's always a bad call or a controversial call. Say the last 3 or 4 times Seattle and Green Bay have played. The Jimmy Graham pass interference, it definitely should have been pass interference. Jimmy Graham's got to be a better actor in those situations. I disagree with you with the block in the back. And the reason why, Nick, is because he put his hand on his back. Now,
Rodgers didn't even fall, didn't affect the play.
It slowed him down. It's not a matter of do you clip a guy or block him in the back, does it affect the play? No, you can't block a guy in the back. Matter of fact, the coaches teach this. When I coach Little League, Nick, this would be good for you. son, when you can read the other kid's name, don't block him because his back is to you. And that's why they called it. Now, that was because he couldn't help to play. He couldn't help to play. So that one right there, I don't call that on the referees. That's a legitimate call. He should have let Aaron Rodgers make the tackle. But the Jimmy Graham, definitely pass interference.
Does the Butcher's son play for the Little League team?
No, the Butcher's a good butcher.
Okay.
Right?
He learns something every time he goes to get something to eat.
Yeah.
We're now joined by Fox NFL analyst Greg Jennings. Hey, Greg, how are you?
Welcome to New York.
I'm doing great. Congratulations
Thank
to
you.
the three of you, Ms. Jenna.
Thank
Mr.
you.
Chris Carter,
Thank you.
Nick
Thank you,
Wright.
brother. Appreciate you, man.
Man, you guys.
Welcome.
You guys
So
do
you're going to
great
spend a
job.
lot of time with us this
We
year,
got you
right?
all week,
Absolutely.
right?
Okay.
Absolutely.
Awesome.
You watched your share of football yesterday. Were you in a hotel? Is that where you are all week?
No, I actually was home until the late game, and then I jumped on the plane and
Oh,
came
wow.
over to see what you got.
All right, nice.
I like to watch it in my own comfort.
Perfect. I don't blame you, which is why I blew off these two to watch the games.
Now we're getting the
Home.
truth, Nick.
Full circle. Odell Beckham Jr. was inactive last night with that high ankle sprain. The Giants' offense could not get anything going without him, scoring only 3 points and gaining less than 250 yards against the Dallas Cowboys. Brandon Marshall only caught 1 pass, and the Giants' leading receiver was Roger Lewis. Giants head coach, exactly. Nick's looking up his stats right now. Coach Ben McAdoo said the Giants do not need Odell for the offense to be successful, but it looks like maybe he does. CC, can the Giants compete without a healthy Odell?
Okay, now, Coach, I'm going to start drug. I know they drug testing the players. I'm going to start drug testing the coaches. Okay? So you're telling me your best offensive player, you don't need him? Get off that coach speak, man. All right? This guy's a special player. Don't act like special players just are walking around like, oh, yeah, like, or he's going to be creative enough because you see without him, he's not real creative. So if he thinks they can win without Odell, well, then there was no excuse except to blame him and say the offense wasn't prepared. Because they looked like a team that had, you know how you practice, Greg, all week and we got all these things, and then on Thursday or Friday, someone twists their ankle, one of the featured players, and then you go into the game plan saying, wow, we practice all these things. Odell hadn't practiced the last 3 weeks.
No excuse.
So what kind of game plan did he have for a Dallas defense that you don't know who their corners are going to be? All right, he didn't have an answer as far as the running game. And if you know Odell is potentially might not going to play, how can you only target Brandon Marshall? Like, Brandon Marshall has to be the featured part of the offense. So, okay, if it wasn't Odell's fault with him, it's the head coach's fault, who also is the play caller and the offensive coordinator.
For me, it's a lose-lose when Odell is off the field. And it's not just because he's a great receiver from statistically catching the ball, the plays that he makes. He draws so much attention from defenses that it opens up everything else. Every other receiver now has a one-on-one matchup. The running game is, well, they running game struggles anyway, but
right.
it can fare a little bit better.
It takes another guy out of the box.
Absolutely. When you have a guy who is this dynamic, who means this much, and he is asking for this much, and we see how much he's valued with this team and this organization, they can't win without him on the field. And it's evident Eli needs him because he's going to make the plays that most receivers in this league, I'm just going to say it, they don't make those Odell plays. You were a special guy.
Chris didn't even make the Odell plays.
Let me tell you.
I mean, Chris made some plays Odell doesn't make.
Hold on. Wait a minute.
But Chris,
are you still drinking from yesterday?
Odell, Odell has taken the quick slant 60 yards to the house with regularity. Like, okay, let me backtrack a little bit.
It's a number
Chris was making all the plays. I apologize. However, Odell's making plays no one else in the league currently is making. Odell wants a new contract for next season. If I'm Odell, I don't know that if I'm coming back to play until A, I get a new contract right now, and B, I get some public apologies from Manning and McAdoo for those comments last year. Those comments on the radio, those comments at press conferences, whining and crying about, it's a distraction, needs to be more mature. You know what's distracting? Getting your ass kicked on Sunday Night Football for the whole national audience start the year when you only score 3 points. That's
I think the whole Giants team went to South Beach.
Yeah, I mean, all we heard was about, Odell does great things, but there is no but with him. Eli Manning, the year before Odell got there, was the worst quarterback in football. 18 touchdowns, 27 picks. Since he got there, he has had a resurgence to his career that appeared to be petering out. Since Odell's been there, when Eli targets him, his quarterback rating is 111. That would lead the league almost every season. When he doesn't target him, when he targets everyone else, his quarterback rating is south of 85. That would be in the bottom half of the league every season. He's the most important non-quarterback in the NFL. So, of course, they need him. And no, they can't win without him.
But can you also, let's not overlook, and I agree with all of you, the fact that he not only provides so much energy and oomph on the field, but he also, like, the offense just looked drab last night. It just looked dead. It's like they needed a personality. They needed some spark. They needed someone. I mean, Eli looked bored. It's what it looked like. And
Greg,
don't underestimate how much he provides, how much Odell provides in that regard as well.
Greg, people complain about the whiteouts. But what do we do? Give them some of the intangibles. Forget the numbers. Just give them some of the intangibles from the time we get off the bus.
We bring the swag.
Oh, that's what
we bring the energy.
That's what I was trying to say. I just didn't use the word swag.
And everybody
talks. I didn't say swag.
Everybody talks about all these off-the-field antics, and he's a distraction. Odell has never been in any trouble.
Nope.
Have we ever talked about him being in trouble?
The one bad thing he did was the Josh Norman game. That's it.
Defend himself.
Absolutely.
Listen, you talk to me in a bad way, you're going to get hit in your ear hole, too.
Absolutely.
Okay?
We overblow it sometimes. And, yes, he is all about showmanship. That is who we are as receivers. I didn't do it a whole lot, but this man did it. Most receivers who are great and know they are great and have the stage and the platform that Odell has, why not?
But I know I'm saying some offenses don't need that. The Giants offense
feed off
needs
of it.
that. They feed off it, and they looked hungry last night without it.
At this point, I don't know how anyone that watches football can have the opinion other than he is on the very short list, if not the single most important player in the league that doesn't play quarterback. This Giants team was 11-5 last year. A Giants team that when he got there was 28th in offense, 28th in points. And since he got there, he's got Ben McAdoo a head coaching job. Everyone's like, oh, McAdoo fixed Eli. McAdoo didn't fix Eli. Odell Beckham fixed Eli. No matter who their running back is, they have spent no resources on running back because they know we're just going to throw it to the kid with the yellow hair. Like, we're going to run. Last year, the Giants were in the same formation over 90% of the time.
And they were playing a lot like they were last night in the game last year that you pointed out where nothing was going right. And what did they decide to do?
They threw a quick slant to Odell. He took it 60 yards for their only touchdown to win the game. He is, and the point you made at the beginning is such an important one. He affects the game on plays he doesn't get the ball.
Absolutely.
Yes.
Because they don't have dynamic guys that are going to create a ton of separation. They certainly don't have dynamic guys that can beat any type of double coverage. But when Odell's in the game, no one gets double covered except him. No one has to deal with the best corner except him. And so he makes everything go.
Nick, you taught me something about your favorite sport, the NBA. Odell's like Steph Curry. Before Steph Curry got to the NBA, people weren't in a rush to get there. You watch the beginning of the NBA game, there's 3,000, 4,000, 5,000 people in the stands until Steph Curry started putting on a show before the game.
Absolutely.
Now, Odell, he puts on a show before the game. Not like any receiver we've ever seen. Now, I used to make a couple catches. We used to do a few things before just to see where our hands were. But Odell, you have to get there early. He's out there working out. He's out there catching one hand, behind the back, all these things that bring attention to the game and gives the team that he's on the juice and the confidence that we got a guy who's a difference maker. And last night, that guy wasn't there. And regardless of what Ben McAdoo, I mean, if his nose was this long yesterday, his nose is the size of mine and Nick Wright's today.
Wait, Greg,
from telling those lies.
Real quick, how much did it expose Eli Manning last night, not having Odell in the lineup?
It exposed him.
Are we just seeing sort of the beginning of the demise of Eli Manning?
Honestly, Eli is who he is. He is who he is. It's whether Odell is on the field or not, it makes him better, to your point. But Eli, he has to be better. He can't just become codependent upon one guy. He has to be. There are other guys that can make plays. They aren't Odell, but Eli has to be better. Just bottom line, he has to play better.
And Brandon Marshall needs more than one catch for 10 yards. Next, let's go around the rest of the NFL. The Eagles beat the Redskins 30-17 in an NFC East showdown. Carson Wentz, the star of the show, throwing for over 300 yards and 2 touchdowns. Nick, what was your biggest takeaway from the game, besides the fact that I was right on Friday?
Well, my takeaway was about the 2 quarterbacks. Carson Wentz, who it's not fair to say I was skeptical about him coming into this year. I just didn't know. I was agnostic on Carson Wentz. Is he as good as he looked early in the season last year? As bad as he looked late, somewhere in between? Yesterday, he looked like he was as good as he looked early last season. And the other quarterback, Kirk Cousins, man, Kirk Cousins is happy this morning that Scott Tolzien and Andy Dalton and Tom Savage exist, because, or else we'd be saying, hey, Kirk, you franchise quarterback, $25 million man. He had 2 interceptions and a fumble lost and played terribly. So those were my 2 biggest takeaways on this game.
My biggest takeaway, the wide receivers finally helped out Carson Wentz. Last year, they were a disaster.
They went out and got him.
I mean, they were a disaster, but the changes they have made, they've really upgraded the position. And I believe, not overreaction Monday, but the Eagles could be one of those teams that surprises everyone and fight for that wild card spot.
Wouldn't be surprising everyone.
Can I just say, it's not that you guys dismissed me on Friday, but when Cris is against something, he goes like this. Let me show it again. That wasn't slow motion. He goes, And what it means is you are so far out in left field, Jenna. We can't even bring you back. We can't even bring you back. Listen, Carson Wentz is in a good place. He has weapons around him. He's composed. He was able to... We talk about this with Aaron Rodgers. He was able to work through plays that were working and work through plays that weren't working. And we did not see that much in him last year. And now he's finally to play. He's playing into his own. He's in the league a couple years, and he's getting really comfortable with that offense.
He made 3 wow plays. You were at my house yesterday, CC. Jenna stood us up.
Oh, boy.
And there were 3 times where it looked like Washington had him dead to rights. One time he just stepped up in the pocket. One time he did a couple twirls running around. And one time he rolled out to his left. And not only did he avoid the sacks, but he then kept his eyes downfield and made big-time throws. One of them resulted in a touchdown. The best researcher in the world, our guy Dustin. He came up. This stat is amazing to me. Last year, Carson Wentz, with and without Lane Johnson in the lineup. Lane Johnson's the big right tackle. Philly, one of the few teams that likes their offensive line. A lot of teams this morning are thinking, why didn't we spend more money on their offensive line? When Lane Johnson's in the lineup, the Eagles are 6-1 with Carson Wentz, and Wentz has a 97 passer rating. The 10 games without Lane Johnson, 2-8, and a passer rating of 70. So I don't know how much of that's correlation, causation, but when Carson Wentz with Lane Johnson has been one hell of a player. That continued yesterday.
That could be an entire show, just how important is the offensive line. As unsexy as they are to talk about, we should really discuss how they make or break quarterbacks.
Tell Lane Johnson stay off them PEDs and he can stay on the field. The quarterback could be a lot better. Also, there was a reason for his absence.
Other good researchers on staff to keep everyone in Ryan Brumley mind. So I just wanted to say
I don't like him, so.
Move on to the AFC. The Raiders went to Tennessee and beat the Titans 26-16. Marshawn Lynch had 18 carries for 76 yards in his Oakland debut. Coming back from injury, Derek Carr threw for 262 yards and 2 touchdowns. CC, what stood out to you from this game? What'd you like?
Oh, man, I love it. I love it because I think that Marshawn didn't need a physical break from football. He needed a mental break. And I believe that he is one of the few people that he is the heart and the soul and the characteristics of Oakland. You know, they're going to play football in Oakland for 2 more years. So if Lynch being part of that team with Carr as their quarterback and that offensive line, it's a great marriage because Beast Mode was running behind one of the worst offensive line. Now he's running behind one of the top 3 offensive line with a franchise quarterback. So I think he fits in the locker room as a leader there. They're looking to lean on him and his leadership. I love Beast Mode.
I was nervous that Beast Mode in Oakland's whole season could go south, similar to what happened with Seattle in the Super Bowl early in this game. Second quarter, Oakland has a 1st and goal from the 1. How'd they get the 1st and goal? Marshawn Lynch picked up a fourth and inches to get him down there, right? 1st and goal from the 1. Let's throw a slant to Amari Cooper. Incomplete. 2nd and goal from the 1. Let's throw a fade to Amari Cooper. Incomplete. 3rd and goal from the 1. Let's throw a crossing pattern to Amari Cooper. Incomplete. They didn't give Marshawn Lynch the ball once when the game was still in the balance. ended up being fine. Marshawn played well. Couple other observations. Tennessee did something that if it works, you are a genius. If it does not work, people are scratching their head. They started their season with a surprise onside kick. They did not recover said onside kick. Oakland drove the short field, and scored a touchdown. And lastly, Marcus Mariota wasn't very good. The Raiders did not have a good defense last year. Aside from Khalil Mack, that defense was subpar. Marcus Mariota, no touchdowns, a 79 quarterback rating. A lot of people think he's going to take the jump this year. We didn't see that this week in week 1.
Mine was Marshawn Lynch. He was fun to watch. He didn't miss a beat. He was old school Marshawn Lynch. I
love him.
And he was just like, go. He just carried guys on him as he's like
I'm about that
picking
action.
up yards.
That action, boss.
And finally, the Tom Savage experiment did not even last 3 quarters in Houston. Deshaun Watson came in and threw a touchdown on his first drive. He then went on to throw a pick and lose a fumble in a 29-7 loss to the Jaguars. Nick, should this be Watson's team going forward?
I think it has to be, even though he is not nearly ready. Deshaun Watson, of all the rookie quarterbacks, Trubisky, the rookie first-rounders, Trubisky, Mahomes, Watson, while Watson was obviously the best college player, he's the one that's going to need the most time. But they put him in just because they needed someone that could run for their lives. The Texans left tackle Dwayne Brown is the one player in the league that is still holding out.
Yes.
The Texans, much like Odell Beckham maybe made some money by not playing, Dwayne Brown probably made a bucket of money by not playing. Cece, Houston gave up 10 sacks. Calais Campbell had 4 all by himself, the big free agent acquisition.
Yes.
Jacksonville does not win road games. This is the first divisional road game Blake Bortles has ever won. They beat the brakes off the Texans. So, yeah, I mean, this is Deshaun Watson's job, but because it has to be, because they need someone that can run for their life because the offensive line is that bad.
Well, it's a short week.
Oh, yeah, that's
It's
right.
this week, so they're playing Thursday night. So how do you get a young quarterback ready in a short period of time? I think now is the time. I'm not concerned about Deshaun and as far as his ability to operate. I'm concerned about their defense.
Yeah.
Now, that was Jacksonville.
Yeah.
At home. Now, they had a lot of hype. J.J. Watt, I mean, God bless him. He did a tremendous job raising funds and everything for the hurricane victims. Came out with the flag and everything. But, man, they had no dominant. That was not a dominant defense. And I was totally shocked by that. Savage, not shocked. I expect to see that. I thought he would be replaced early in the season. Not quite as early. But that defense is going to have to get up to a championship level.
Nick, why did you say that Deshaun Watson was the best quarterback coming out, but he needs the most work?
Well, he was certainly the most accomplished in college. He went to 2 straight national championship games, won the last one. He was the most impressive collegiate player. But when I watched him this preseason, he looked like a collegiate player. A guy that was running a different type of offense at Clemson and running in the pros. And I think of those 3 quarterbacks, Mahomes, Trubisky, and Watson, I do believe Watson has the highest ceiling, but I also think he has the stiffest learning curve. But Cece, your point about the defense, you're at home against Blake Bortles, man.
Yes.
You have J.J. Watt. You have Jadeveon Clowney. You have Whitney Merciless. You're as healthy as you're going to be all year. And you get embarrassed, man. I understand the offense didn't help you out. I get it. The offense was really bad. But that defense is supposed to win that game by itself. That's what the Texans have done in years past with bad quarterbacks. Not like the Texans have had a lot of good quarterbacks. They've had no good quarterbacks in the history of the franchise except for 1 year of Matt Schaub. They're supposed to win that game. Jacksonville somehow all alone in first place in the AFC South.
Right. General manager in Houston, Rick Smith. Rick, you got to swallow your pride. You got to get the left tackle signed. Now, the problem with the contract is they say that they don't pay guys or redo contracts that have 2 years left. But they did redo J.J. Watt's contract.
With 2 years left.
Yeah, with 2 years left.
All right. We're getting back to the NFL here. Cam Newton looked to kick off the 2017 season on the right foot and the right shoulder after a disappointing 2016 campaign. While he was not yet in MVP form, didn't matter in Sunday's 23-3 rout of San Francisco. Cam went 14 of 25 through 2 touchdowns and a pick. I hate to ask you this, but do you have any reason to worry whatsoever, Nick?
Well, listen.
Just that it wasn't the kind of Cam Newton we saw 2 years ago.
It's the reason you're asking this is because people around the country are going to be dissecting Cam today. They're going to point to one terrible throw And it was a terrible throw. He had Ed Dixon in a totally blown coverage, no one within a 20-yard radius of him, and Cam overthrew him by about 5 yards, maybe 10 yards, maybe 15 yards. It was a really bad throw. Aside from that, you saw exactly what you wanted to see from Cam. He wasn't running as much, which you said he needs to chill out on, and you saw him utilizing his running backs out of the backfield in a way he never has. All last season, Cam completed 44 passes to running backs. Yesterday, he completed 9 in one game. You saw that Christian McCaffrey is going to be a real part of that offense. Cam only threw 2 preseason passes, so there was going to be some rust.
Right.
He wasn't super accurate, but in my estimation, he made one terrible mistake, the missed touchdown. Aside from that, you saw what you needed to see in a game Carolina controlled throughout.
I'm not concerned about Cam. Shoulder surgery in March. A lot of time missed. He's a phenomenal athlete. You can see that he's continually to work on his fundamentals the way all the great quarterbacks do. Could have a higher percentage, but the distribution of the ball between him and the skill guys, that's what takes Cam to the next level. So Mike Shula, great job. Front office, great job drafting players to be able to help Cam out. And even though your nickname is Superman, I like the fact that every game you don't have to be Superman. So no worries about Cam.
I love the fact that he saw that he could win a game without having to run as often as he did. And I think for him,
that's
mentally
empowering.
and physically, that is very empowering.
And while no one thinks San Francisco's going to be a great team, they don't have a terrible defensive front. And what you saw is the Carolina offensive line held up a little bit better than I thought they would. One of the reasons Cam's had to run so much in the past is they've had bad tackles. They've had guys that haven't allowed them to get into their deep shot offense. Cam had more time than I think a lot of people thought he would. He missed a few throws, but I'm excited to see what they do next week against Buffalo, another team with a good defense, team that's going to be able to score more points than San Francisco is.
Thank you for listening to your First Things First podcast. I'm your host, Jenna Wolfe. We will be back at the same time tomorrow, 6:30 a.m. Eastern on FS1. Subscribe to the show on Apple Podcasts. So long, everybody.